There comes a moment in every human life when the noise becomes unbearable. Not the noise outside, the noise inside. The voice that whispers that maybe you waited too long. The voice that reminds you of every mistake, every delay, every opportunity that slipped through your hands while you stood frozen between fear and doubt. The voice that tells you other people were born with something you never had. More talent, more luck, more confidence, more time. And if you listen to that voice long enough, you begin to live like a spectator in your own existence. You wake up with dreams in your chest and chains around your mind. You move through life carrying invisible limits like they are laws of nature. You start negotiating with your own potential. You begin accepting half-lived days, watered-down ambitions, and a future that feels smaller every year. But there is another voice, a quieter voice, a dangerous voice, a voice that does not scream, a voice that waits. And when your life becomes painful enough, when disappointment becomes heavier than fear, when you finally grow exhausted from betraying your own purpose, that voice rises from somewhere deep within your spirit and says, enough. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because there is a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The greatest prison in the world is not poverty. It is not rejection. It is not failure. The greatest prison in the world is indecision. Indecision steals more dreams than defeat ever will. Indecision keeps brilliant minds trapped in ordinary lives. Indecision creates hesitation. Hesitation creates fear, and fear creates a lifetime of unrealized power. The world does not reward the hesitant. The world bends for those who decide. Every empire began with a decision. Every revolution began with a decision. Every transformation of the human soul began with a moment where someone looked at the chaos of their life and said, I refuse to stay this way. That is where power begins, not in certainty, not in perfect conditions, not in guarantees. Power begins the moment a human being decides that retreat is no longer an option. Because once the mind commits completely, something extraordinary happens. Energy reorganizes itself, attention sharpens, opportunities that were invisible begin to appear. Courage awakens. The spirit rises, the body follows. Most people never experience this force because they never fully commit. They dip their toes into greatness while keeping one foot planted in safety. They want victory with an escape route. They want transformation without discomfort. They want extraordinary lives built from ordinary habits. But life does not respond to interest. Life responds to obsession. And the people who change the world are not always the smartest, not always the most gifted, not always the most connected. They are the people who made one irreversible decision. I will not stop. There is something terrifying about a human being who reaches that point. Because once a person truly decides, obstacles stop looking permanent. Pain stops looking fatal. Failure stops looking final. The moment you decide once and refuse to quit, you become dangerous to every limitation that once controlled you. Think about the ocean during a storm. The waves rise like mountains. The wind attacks from every direction. Ships disappear beneath the violence of the sea. Most people live their lives reacting to storms. Every criticism shakes them. Every setback redirects them. Every failure convinces them to abandon their vision. But there are those rare individuals who become like lighthouses. The storm does not move them. The darkness does not intimidate them. The chaos only proves what they are made of. And what separates the lighthouse from the drifting ship? Decision. One stands for something. The other reacts to everything. You must understand this deeply. Your life changes the instant your standards become stronger than your excuses. Because excuses are seductive. Excuses sound intelligent. Excuses can be justified. You can blame your past. You can blame your circumstances. You can blame your childhood. You can blame the economy. You can blame timing. You can blame the people who doubted you, and maybe all of it is true, but the truth will not save you. Only responsibility will. There are people who came from broken homes and built empires. There are people who lost everything and rose stronger. There are people who were rejected, humiliated, ignored, and underestimated who still conquered mountains because they made a decision stronger than their pain. The difference was never their conditions. The difference was their identity. They stopped seeing themselves as victims of life and started seeing themselves as creators of destiny. That shift changes everything, because the human mind is a magnet. Whatever dominates your thinking eventually shapes your reality. If your mind is filled with fear, you will unconsciously create hesitation. If your mind is filled with doubt, you will sabotage opportunities. If your mind is consumed by limitation, you will shrink every possibility before it has the chance to grow. But if your mind becomes consumed with vision, if your thoughts become aligned with purpose, if you decide with absolute certainty that your future will not resemble your past, then your entire life begins to reorganize around that conviction. Most people underestimate the power of belief because belief cannot be touched. It cannot be measured in the beginning. It exists invisibly before it manifests physically. But every skyscraper existed first as a thought. Every invention existed first as an idea. Every masterpiece existed first inside imagination. And every transformed life begins with a belief powerful enough to survive reality before reality catches up. That is why the world tries to crush your belief first. Because once belief dies, action disappears. And once action disappears, destiny collapses. People will tell you to be realistic. They will project their fears onto your ambitions. They will laugh at your goals because your courage reminds them of their surrender. Never forget this. Average minds are uncomfortable around impossible visions. When a person has abandoned their own dream, they become offended by anyone still chasing one. Do not let small thinking infect your spirit. You were not born to spend your entire life asking permission to become who you are capable of being. You were not born to silence your potential so insecure people can remain comfortable. You were not born to merely survive. You were born with creative force inside you, a force powerful enough to rebuild your life from the ashes if necessary, but force without direction becomes destruction. That is why clarity matters. A river becomes powerful because it flows in one direction. Sunlight becomes fire when focused through a lens. Human energy becomes unstoppable when concentrated on a single purpose. Scattered minds create weak lives. Focused minds create history. Most people wake up every day without a clear target. Their attention is divided. Their priorities are confused. Their energy leaks into distractions, gossip, entertainment, comparison, and endless mental noise. Then they wonder why they feel empty. A life without purpose drains the soul. Purpose is not merely a goal. Purpose is a reason to endure suffering. Purpose gives pain meaning. Purpose transforms obstacles into training. Purpose turns ordinary effort into sacred mission. When a person discovers a purpose larger than comfort, discipline stops feeling like punishment. Sacrifice stops feeling unfair. Early mornings stop feeling painful, because now there is a reason. And the human spirit can survive almost anything when it possesses a meaningful reason. Look carefully at the people who achieve greatness. Their lives are rarely easy. They face rejection, exhaustion, uncertainty, criticism, and setbacks beyond imagination. But they continue. Why? Because they decided their mission mattered more than their mood. That is the separation. Weak people worship comfort. Strong people worship purpose. And comfort is a slow death. Comfort convinces you to delay your dreams. Comfort teaches you to avoid risk. Comfort numbs your hunger. Comfort weakens your standards. Comfort steals urgency from your spirit. Meanwhile, life moves, time moves, opportunity moves. And one day you wake up staring at the consequences of years spent choosing convenience over growth. Do not wait for tragedy to awaken you. Do not wait until your potential becomes regret. Decide now, because there are two pains every human being must face: the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. One burns for a moment, the other haunts for a lifetime. The world has conditioned people to chase motivation, but motivation is unstable. Motivation changes with emotion. Motivation disappears when discomfort arrives. Discipline is different. Discipline is identity. Discipline is doing what must be done even when your emotions rebel against it. Discipline is remaining loyal to your future self instead of your present feelings. Discipline is refusing to negotiate with weakness. And every act of discipline sends a message to your subconscious mind: I am a person who follows through. I am a person who finishes. I am a person who can be trusted with greater responsibility. That internal reputation matters more than external praise, because when you repeatedly betray your own promises, your confidence begins to collapse. You stop trusting yourself. You stop believing your own words. You become divided inside. But every time you keep a promise to yourself, even a small one, you rebuild power. Confidence is not born from compliments. Confidence is built through evidence. Every early morning, every difficult workout, every hour spent learning while others waste time, every moment you continue despite exhaustion, every refusal to quit, these become proof. And eventually you no longer need motivation because your identity has changed. You become the kind of person who does not stop. That transformation is everything, because success is rarely one giant moment. It is usually hidden inside ordinary repetitions, tiny decisions, repeated daily, until they become destiny. A single drop of water seems weak, but constant drops can carve through stone. Consistency possesses a violence most people underestimate. The person who keeps moving gains momentum. The person who keeps learning gains wisdom. The person who keeps showing up eventually becomes impossible to ignore. This is why persistence terrifies the world. Talent can be defeated. Luck can disappear. Resources can vanish. But a human being who refuses to quit becomes nearly unstoppable. There will be days when nothing makes sense. Days when effort appears invisible. Days when progress feels non-existent. Days when your mind becomes a battlefield between faith and surrender. Those days matter more than the easy ones. Anyone can move forward when inspired. But the people who transform their lives are the ones who continue moving when inspiration disappears. That is when character is revealed. The seed does not break through the earth the day it is planted. For a long time, nothing appears to happen. Beneath the surface, invisible roots are forming. Strength is developing silently. Most people quit during the invisible stage. They mistake lack of visible results for lack of progress. But growth is often hidden before it becomes obvious. Your job is not to control the timing. Your job is to remain faithful to the process. Understand this deeply. The universe tests commitment before rewarding it, not because life is cruel, but because weak desire cannot sustain powerful success. If you crumble at the first sign of adversity, you are not yet prepared for the weight of the vision you claim to want. Greatness requires expansion. Expansion requires pressure. Pressure reveals strength. Diamonds are created under crushing force. Steel is forged through fire. Human beings are transformed through resistance. Stop asking why life is difficult. Ask what the difficulty is preparing you to become, because every challenge contains hidden instruction. Every setback contains a lesson. Every failure contains information. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is refinement. The most dangerous thing you can do is interpret temporary defeat as permanent identity. You failed at something. That does not mean you are a failure. A storm passed through your life. That does not mean your future is destroyed, a door closed. That does not mean destiny ended. Too many people surrender after one disappointment because they expected the path to be smooth. But smooth roads rarely lead to extraordinary destinations. The mountain does not apologize for being steep. The climb is what creates the strength necessary to stand at the summit. And when you finally reach higher ground, you realize something profound. The obstacles were never blocking the path. The obstacles were the path. Everything you survive becomes part of your power. Every scar becomes wisdom. Every hardship deepens your perspective. Every battle sharpens your spirit. One day, the very thing that almost broke you becomes the reason you are unshakable. That is why resilience matters. Resilience is not pretending pain does not exist. Resilience is refusing to let pain have the final word. There are people smiling in public while silently collapsing inside. There are people carrying dreams buried beneath years of disappointment. There are people who have been betrayed so many times they no longer trust their own hope. But hope is not weakness. Hope is rebellion. To continue believing after repeated failure, to continue trying after humiliation, to continue building after destruction, that is strength. And strength is built one decision at a time. Not once, daily. Every morning you choose whether you will feed faith or fear. Every day you choose whether you will strengthen excuses or discipline. Every moment you choose whether your life will be directed by purpose or distraction. The quality of your future is hidden inside the quality of your daily decisions. That is why your environment matters. Energy is contagious. If you surround yourself with people who complain constantly, your ambition will slowly decay. If you surround yourself with people addicted to mediocrity, your standards will begin to shrink. If you spend your life absorbing negativity, eventually your mind will start producing it. Protect your mind like your future depends on it, because it does. Your thoughts become words. Your words become actions. Your actions become habits. Your habits become character. Your character becomes destiny. Nothing changes until thinking changes. The mind is a garden. Whatever you water will grow. Water resentment, and bitterness will consume you. Water fear, and limitation will multiply. Water vision, and possibility will expand. Water gratitude, and abundance will appear where emptiness once existed. Gratitude is not denial of difficulty. Gratitude is recognition of power. A grateful mind sees opportunity where others see obstacles. A grateful spirit remains open while others collapse into despair. And gratitude changes your frequency, because people who are grateful move differently. They create differently. They endure differently. They stop obsessing over what is missing and start maximizing what already exists. That shift alone can transform a life. Many people wait for external circumstances to improve before they commit to growth. But transformation begins internally first. You cannot hate yourself into greatness. You cannot shame yourself into abundance. You cannot build a powerful future while constantly declaring weakness over your identity. Your words matter. The human nervous system listens to the language you repeatedly use. If you constantly say you are exhausted, defeated, unlucky, broken, or incapable, your subconscious mind accepts those instructions. But when you speak strength, when you declare vision, when you affirm possibility despite current conditions, you begin reprogramming the architecture of your mind. This is not fantasy. It is conditioning. Athletes condition their bodies. Warriors condition their instincts. Leaders condition their minds. And the most powerful conditioning of all is repetition. What you repeat emotionally becomes belief. What you believe consistently becomes behavior. What you practice repeatedly becomes identity. So ask yourself, what identity are you reinforcing every day? Are you training yourself to retreat? Or are you training yourself to rise? Because eventually life will present moments that demand everything from you. Moments where fear whispers louder than confidence. moments where exhaustion begs you to surrender, moments where nobody claps for you, supports you, or understands the battle happening inside your mind. In those moments, you will not rise to the level of your wishes. You will fall to the level of your conditioning. That is why the small decisions matter. The world sees the performance. It rarely sees the preparation. It sees the victory. It rarely sees the lonely nights, the sacrifices, the repetition, the discipline, the failures, and the years spent building strength in silence. But silence is where transformation begins. A tree grows underground long before it rises above the earth. And some of the most important battles you will ever fight will happen where nobody else can see them. Inside your thoughts, inside your habits, inside the conversations you have with yourself when the world becomes quiet. Win there first, because external success without internal alignment eventually collapses. You must become mentally strong enough to carry the life you are asking for. Money amplifies identity. Power amplifies character. Success amplifies discipline or dysfunction. If your inner world is chaotic, external achievement will not save you. That is why self-mastery matters more than status. The strongest person in the room is not always the loudest. It is often the one who has learned how to control their impulses, direct their energy, and remain grounded under pressure. Mastery begins with awareness. Pay attention to what drains you. Pay attention to what strengthens you. Pay attention to the habits quietly shaping your destiny. Your life is not created in giant, dramatic moments. It is built in the hidden routines repeated every day. And one routine can change everything. One disciplined hour every morning. One courageous conversation. One committed decision. One refusal to quit. That is how transformation begins. Not all at once, but permanently. And permanence is what most people never achieve. They live in cycles, motivated for a week, disciplined for a month, inspired for a moment, then distracted again, pulled backward by old habits, old environments, old fears, and old identities. They keep trying to change their results without changing the person producing those results. But a new life requires a new self. You cannot think like the person who quits and expect the rewards earned by the person who endures. You cannot continue feeding weakness while praying for strength. You cannot keep entertaining distraction while asking for greatness. Every level of your life is shaped by the standards you tolerate. If you tolerate inconsistency, your future becomes unstable. If you tolerate excuses, your potential begins to decay. If you tolerate mediocrity, eventually mediocrity becomes your identity. But when your standards rise, your life is forced to rise with them. That is why decision is sacred. A real decision cuts off alternatives. A real decision burns the bridge behind you. A real decision says, no matter how difficult this becomes, I will continue. Most people make wishes. Few people make decisions. A wish changes with emotion. A decision survives emotion. When the alarm rings early in the morning, emotion says, stay in bed. Decision says, get up. When failure humiliates you, emotion says, disappear. Decision says, continue. When progress is slow, emotion says, maybe this is not working. Decision says, stay faithful. This is why successful people appear different. They are not free from doubt. They are not free from fear. They are not free from difficulty. They simply stopped consulting their emotions before taking action. And that is a superpower. Because feelings are temporary. Purpose is deeper. The person who only acts when they feel inspired becomes a prisoner of emotional weather. One bad day destroys momentum. One disappointment collapses discipline. One criticism shuts down effort. But the person who acts from commitment instead of emotion becomes stable, dangerously stable. They continue whether conditions are favorable or not. They continue whether applause exists or not. They continue whether anyone believes in them or not. And eventually the world has no choice but to respond to that level of consistency. Look at nature. The sun rises every day without applause. The tide moves every day without recognition. The seasons change without permission. Powerful things do not require validation to continue. Neither should you. Too many dreams die because people became addicted to external approval. They wanted immediate recognition, immediate support, immediate evidence. But the early stages of greatness are often invisible. There will be seasons where nobody understands your vision. Seasons where your progress cannot be measured publicly. Seasons where your effort appears unrewarded. Keep building anyway. The architect sees the structure before the foundation is visible. The sculptor sees the masterpiece before the stone is shaped. The visionary sees possibility before reality confirms it. And if you wait for the world to believe before you believe, you will remain trapped forever. Your belief must come first, not arrogance, not delusion, conviction. The kind of conviction that remains standing after disappointment. The kind of conviction that survives rejection. The kind of conviction that keeps moving while uncertainty surrounds it. Because uncertainty is unavoidable. Nobody receives a map to greatness. Nobody receives guarantees. Nobody begins fully prepared. Clarity often arrives after movement, not before it. A ship cannot be steered while sitting motionless at the harbor. Direction becomes clearer once motion begins. That is why action matters so much. Ideas alone change nothing. Vision without execution becomes fantasy. Knowledge without action becomes frustration. The cemetery is filled with potential that was never acted upon, books unwritten, businesses never started, dreams never pursued, voices never heard, lives never fully lived, not because people lacked ability, but because they delayed action waiting for certainty. Listen carefully. Perfection is one of the most dangerous forms of fear. People hide behind preparation because preparation feels safer than exposure. As long as the dream remains untested, the ego remains protected. But growth requires vulnerability. You must be willing to look inexperienced. You must be willing to fail publicly. You must be willing to learn awkwardly. Every master was once unskilled. Every champion was once unknown. Every powerful person once doubted themselves. The difference is they began anyway, and every time they failed, they extracted wisdom instead of surrender. That is another secret of extraordinary people. They do not interpret failure emotionally. They interpret it strategically. Failure becomes feedback. Pain becomes instruction. Resistance becomes adaptation. They ask, what is this experience trying to teach me? How can this make me stronger? What must I improve? That mindset creates evolution. Weak minds ask why adversity is happening. Strong minds ask what adversity is producing. Because pressure reveals hidden weaknesses. Pressure exposes insecurity. Pressure uncovers lack of preparation. And that revelation is valuable. You cannot strengthen what you refuse to confront. A warrior who ignores weakness becomes vulnerable in battle. A leader who avoids truth eventually collapses under responsibility. A human being who refuses self-awareness remains trapped in repeating cycles. Self-honesty is painful, but it is liberating. You must have the courage to look at your life without illusion. Where are you wasting time? Where are you sabotaging yourself? Where are you pretending? Where are you shrinking? Where are you tolerating less than you are capable of becoming? Do not ask these questions to punish yourself. Ask them to awaken yourself. Because awareness creates choice, and choice creates change. The moment you become conscious of destructive patterns, you reclaim power. Now the future is no longer automatic, and that matters because habits are invisible architects. A single habit repeated for years can either build a kingdom or destroy one. 1 hour wasted every day becomes years lost. 1 hour invested every day becomes mastery. The difference between average and extraordinary is often hidden inside small, repeated behaviors. People want dramatic transformation, but dramatic transformation is usually the result of invisible consistency. A body is built one workout at a time. A business is built one decision at a time. A legacy is built one disciplined day at a time. And the hardest part is not starting. The hardest part is continuing when novelty disappears, because the beginning is exciting. The beginning contains imagination. The beginning contains possibility. But eventually reality arrives. The work becomes repetitive. The progress becomes slower. The obstacles become real. That is where most people disappear. But the ones who win understand something deeper. Repetition is not punishment. Repetition is transformation. A musician practices scales thousands of times. An athlete trains movements until instinct replaces hesitation. A leader strengthens decision-making through constant responsibility. Mastery is repetition refined, and your future is hidden inside what you repeatedly do. So if you want a powerful life, build powerful rituals. Wake up with intention, protect your focus, train your body, strengthen your mind, feed your spirit with vision instead of negativity. The modern world profits from distraction. Every notification competes for your attention. Every platform fights for your focus. Every meaningless controversy tries to consume your emotional energy, and people wonder why they feel mentally exhausted. Attention is life force. Whatever controls your attention controls the direction of your life. If your attention is constantly fragmented, your potential becomes fragmented. That is why focus is rare, and rarity creates value. A focused mind can accomplish in 1 year what distracted minds never achieve in a lifetime. Protect your focus fiercely. Not everyone deserves access to your energy. Not every opinion deserves space in your mind. Not every distraction deserves your response. Sometimes growth requires isolation, not permanent isolation from humanity, but temporary separation from noise. There are seasons where you must disappear from distraction to reconnect with purpose. Seasons where you must become disciplined enough to hear your own thoughts again. Seasons where you must distance yourself from people committed to misunderstanding your vision. The eagle does not fly at the altitude of pigeons. If you keep lowering your standards to remain accepted by people addicted to mediocrity, you will slowly betray your own destiny. You cannot soar while constantly apologizing for your ambition. And ambition is not selfish when rooted in purpose. There is nothing noble about shrinking your gifts. There is nothing honorable about burying your potential. The world does not benefit when capable people play small. Your growth gives other people permission to grow. Your courage inspires courage. Your discipline inspires discipline. Your transformation becomes evidence that transformation is possible. Never underestimate the ripple effect of one committed human being. One decision can alter generations. One person choosing courage can break cycles of fear. One person choosing discipline can change the future of an entire family. One person choosing vision can create opportunities that never existed before. That is why your life matters. Not because perfection is expected from you, but because responsibility is. You have been given gifts, abilities, instincts, perspectives, and experiences no one else possesses in exactly the same form. And buried inside those experiences is a purpose waiting for expression. But purpose requires courage, because purpose will demand sacrifice. It will demand that you outgrow old identities. It will demand that you release environments that no longer align. It will demand that you disappoint people who benefited from your weakness. Growth changes relationships. Not everyone will celebrate your evolution. Some people only love the version of you they could control. Some people become uncomfortable when you stop settling. Some people will call your discipline arrogance because your standards expose their excuses. Let them misunderstand. You cannot build an extraordinary life while needing universal approval. And remember this, criticism is often proof that you are moving. Nobody throws stones at statues that remain hidden underground. The moment you begin rising, resistance appears. Expect it. When you chase a bigger vision, your old self fights back. Your fears fight back. The world tests your seriousness. That is normal. Every level of growth demands a new version of you, and transition periods are uncomfortable. The caterpillar dissolves before becoming the butterfly. The old identity must collapse before the new identity stabilizes. That process can feel lonely. You may outgrow conversations that once entertained you. You may lose interest in habits that once controlled you. You may feel disconnected from environments that no longer nourish your spirit. Do not panic during transformation. Evolution often feels like isolation before it feels like expansion. Trust the process. There is wisdom developing inside your struggle, strength developing inside your discipline, clarity developing inside your silence. And one day you will look back at the moments that nearly broke you and realize they were constructing someone stronger than the version of you that first entered the battle. Because life does not merely ask what you want. Life asks who you are willing to become in order to receive it. That is the deeper question. Not what do you desire, but what are you prepared to endure? Dreams are easy to announce. Destiny is expensive. Everything meaningful costs something. Peace costs discipline. Strength costs struggle. Wisdom costs experience. Greatness costs comfort. And the people who achieve extraordinary lives are usually the ones who became willing to pay the price repeatedly without immediate reward. They understood delayed gratification. They planted seeds while others demanded instant harvest. They stayed loyal to long-term vision while the world became addicted to quick pleasure. And that ability to delay gratification creates power. Because when you control impulses, you reclaim authority over your future. Most people destroy their tomorrow trying to satisfy today. But leaders think differently. They ask, will this decision strengthen my future or weaken it? Will this habit build momentum or destroy it? Will this action move me closer to purpose or farther away from it? That level of intentionality changes everything, because eventually your life becomes a reflection of accumulated decisions, not luck, not chance, not random fate, daily decisions. And if daily decisions created your current reality, daily decisions can create a new one, which means no matter how far you have fallen, the future is still being written. That should ignite something inside you. You are not trapped unless you stop moving. You are not defeated unless you surrender. You are not finished unless you decide to remain where you are. As long as breath remains in your body, possibility remains alive. But possibility alone is not enough. You must act. You must commit. You must decide once and refuse to quit.